Buongiorno, Mondo, and welcome back to 15 with Fosca, the podcast, and to the second part of my conversation with Italian-American author Libby Cataldi about her new book, It Takes a Lifetime to Learn How to Live, an Italian-American story of coming home. Libby writes to understand her life, her family, and her world. She writes about addiction, her Italian heritage, and her relationship with her grandmother and mother. Stay right where you are to hear part 2 of Libby's incredible story and about her wonderful new book. Grazie mille e buon ascolto. So what I was going to ask you, I think, now I know you a little, but, now that I've read the book, I feel like I know you a lot. And that, I don't know, just I guess my next question would be, how has all of this made you who you are today? The whole, as you're telling this story again, and I've read it, but when you tell it, it's very poignant. And I find myself asking, like, how did Libby become this person, and tell me more about what it's taken for you to get to where you are. Your family story is not easy, Libby.
No.
Not at all. None of it is. None of it is. Like, all I can think is, like, how resilient is this woman, And as I'm reading the book, I'm like, another wow, like a whammy. So, I don't know, just like what we know about Nonna Carmela. I mean, I know about Nonna Carmela, your difficult relationship with your mom, your various, life experiences and stories. But what makes you the Libby you are today, and how much of that would you attribute to your Italian-American culture and your family?
Interesting. I think it all goes back to that is the truth. Yeah. But two things. One is that if I hadn't been really broken, breast cancer, a bilateral mastectomy, Jeff was shooting heroin into his neck and into his groin. My dad died. I left my community at the school where I had been for 21 years and had for 17 years. All that happened in 1 year, in 2004, exactly.
Wow.
And sometimes when you finally find your knees, you're forced to open another door. And that's when I came back here. That's when I came back and found my roots. Because Nonna was strong, and I figured it had to be in me somehow. She was the key. And so being broken, bad things happen to good people, and a lot of bad stuff happened to us, but we're still together. And that came a lot from Nonna Carmela. In fact, my mother said that when she died, she was in the car behind the hearse with my dad, who was a powerhouse, and her brother, Uncle Tony, on the other side, who was another powerhouse. Mm-hmm. And she said, there in the car, they wept. They didn't weep in public anywhere. And all they kept saying is, how do we continue to live life without Nonna? Because she held us all steady. One time I said to my dad when Jeff was sick, when can I quit? When he's 18, when he's 21, when can I quit? Because it's devastating. I mean, it's like a tsunami.
Yeah.
My dad looked at me, pointed his finger at me, and he said, listen, dearie, with your kids, there's no quit.
Yeah.
And so that's the way I was raised. There is no quit. You just hang in there and you continue to love and you continue to work really hard. But Italy for me was my salvation. Yeah. If I had stayed in the States with all the problems and everything, I don't know what would have happened. But when I came here too, I learned this stagli vicino, stay close, yeah. Stay close to him, stare vicino. I mean, this is an Italian concept, right?
Oh, yeah.
Stay close to him. Yeah. It's embedded in the Italian bone.
Yeah.
But in the States, what was it? In the States, it was stagli lontano, stay away, throw him out of the house. If your son's addicted, it was tough love.
Tough love, yeah.
It was tough love. And here, when I came here and I told people, oh, my son's a heroin addict, in Italy, the first response was, I'm so sorry. Is he in community?
Yeah.
And my response was no. He's in an institution. He's in a hospital. He's in a center. Here it's community.
Yeah.
There it's a center. So even the language is different. Mm-hmm. And so when I learned stare vicino here, it melded exactly with what I had learned on the streets of Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
In this, but I grew up in this Italian community.
Yeah.
So I'm glad. I mean, I'm grateful every day of my life. Jeff is good today. He's 19 years sober. I mean, yeah, it is amazing because only 4% of heroin addicts live and stay well in the States. I don't know what the what the rates are here in Italy, but he's good. We're good. Our family is still together. But a lot of it goes back to Nonna Carmela.
Yeah, I think so too. And you're saying this, and my family is very Italian American, although it's mixed. But I didn't grow up in a heavily Italian American community. But this, I feel like there was always this this inexplicable thing that was happening. That's very Italian American. It's in our DNA or whatever. Even in the most dysfunctional families, we're family. Like, you have to take care of your family. Like, when people would do things that, even my parents who were, second and third generation, but for them that was like Italians don't do that. Italians would never act like that or do that. So I think it's so beautiful, this, stay close to him, love him, not kick him out. The American practicality, the American, I would even hazard to say the coldness, get him out, leave him alone, whatever. No, you stood by him.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, I think, something that we still have as Italian Americans, this very deep sense of honoring your family and love. I think it's that's what sort of always comes through, at least for me, is just this love, I want to talk about a very important part of Italian American culture and an expression of love, which is food. Because, I couldn't not talk about it. So food is crucial in the book. It's crucial for us as Italian Americans, of course, and it represents your connectedness to Carmela and to Rotondella. But for you, it's also a balm, and it's familiarity and memory, not only for you, but also the greater community in Pittsburgh, but also more broadly in Italy. And I'm going to quote you. You say, Nonna, like these women, had created a legacy of love, culture, and tradition, all wrapped around food. And then there's a beautiful passage from your book, which I'm going to read. Comfortable as a priest before the altar, Carmela stands at her stove. Her right arm moves in familiar circles as she stirs rich red sugo with a wooden spoon, the spoon that never hits me. While she cooks, she moves her lips slowly in prayer. The scent of her heavenly tomato and garlic sauce quiets me, fills me with peace. I love this. I love this passage. And I want to know a little more about that. I want to talk a little more about food. And I want to know also what immediately conjures up Carmela in your mind and what soothes you now.
It's still the smell of sugo. It is. It is. When I smell sugo, I am back in her kitchen.
Yeah.
And in her kitchen, I was safe.
Yeah.
In her home, I was safe. My mother couldn't hit me there. She would never hit me in front of my nonna. Or my dad, is the truth. But there I was safe. And so when I think of sugo, when I think, in America we have meatballs, right? And I remember being at Nonna's house and we had Mancini bread. You know, you got Italian bread at Mancini's.
Yeah.
And she'd break off a piece and I could dip it in the pot, right? And then she'd let me eat a couple meatballs before everybody else showed up for Sunday dinner. You know, and I thought I was like a queen.
Right.
We'd go to church every Sunday and on the way back we'd buy ricotta and she'd make me linguine with ricotta. I mean, I see ricotta yet today.
Yeah.
And it brings me right back to the feelings of love, safety, and security. I make that for my own grandchildren.
Yeah.
You know, when we're sick, when my kids are sick, when my grandchildren, I make chicken pastina soup.
I was just going to say, it's certain things just...
Exactly.
Yeah, they're everywhere. Yeah.
I was talking to a friend of mine who is from Georgia in the United States, and he said, comfort food for him, is tomato soup and grilled cheese sandwiches.
Right.
I didn't have tomato soup and grilled cheese sandwiches till I was probably 30 years old, but we had chicken pastina soup.
Yeah.
And my kids to this day get chicken pastina soup. Chicken and peppers. Nonna used to make chicken and peppers. And my mother, picante, she'd always want it hot. And falagone, we call them in the States. It's falahoni here in Rotondella. And they're like little crescent pies,
Oh, those are yummy.
filled with like potatoes and things.
Yeah.
When I go to visit my family in Rotondella, they always make me falaoni, because it's Nonna, and they want to honor my memories, which is such a beautiful thing. And so the foods, at Christmas time or at Easter time, she'd make, the Easter bread, and it's Kudor is the little one she would make for us. And they were sweet, kind of sweet, but not sweet.
Right.
But she'd make them in like a baby doll. And then she'd put an egg, the Easter bread with the egg in the center. And she'd say, manja, 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 nonna red, eat the baby. It was always that Christmas and Christmas. She made a certain kind of Christmas cookie because she was poor. Like, even linguine with ricotta. Yeah. I was telling somebody in Florence about it, and this friend of mine, Kiki, is a wonderful cook, full Italian. And she says, you put a little bit of olive oil and butter, a little bit of olive oil and in it, right? And no. I mean, this is cucina povera.
Yeah.
We were poor. She made had ricotta with the water from the pot.
Yep.
Salt and pepper, and that was it.
Yep.
But it was perfect.
It was sublime. It was delicious.
It was perfect.
It was perfect.
And she'd make this frizzol, which is a kind of pasta. It's only made with water and flour and salt. But it's a special pasta that comes from Rotondella. And that's all she knew how to make. Gnocchi. She made gnocchi because they made it.
Right.
She only knew. Gosh, could she cook?
Yeah.
She was the best.
Yeah.
And so, yes. So when I see those dishes, when I go back to Rotondella, my cousins now live in Policoro, which is down the hill from Rotondella. When I go back and I eat those foods, I mean, there are times I swell with tears.
I was going to say, I mean, you're talking about this, and it must be something about grandmothers from Basilicata, because my grandmother was like a genius in the kitchen.
Yes.
And I have tried all my life. We have certain things in the family, my aunt and my mom, and I talk about it all the time. Like, how the hell did she make those stuffed artichokes? How did she make, I try to replicate everything she did. And still today, I mean, and this is why it struck me so much about your book, but still today, I smell things here in Italy, especially when I'm in the South. Mm-hmm. And I'm immediately transported back to her kitchen. And I have to admit, I have not been to Basilicata. I should be. Now that I've read your book, I have to go. But I want to talk about Rotondella a little more, because you did find family members and you did find this identity. And you have this connection to them. So I want to hear a little more about that. And then, just because you introduced it so perfectly, you threw in some great dialect words. I want to ask you some about the dialect that you use in the book, and that also is so important in your story. So tell me a little bit about your new family, your old family in Rotondella.
It was an amazing trip back to Rotondella with Umbretta in 1999.
She's great, by the way.
She is a dynamo.
She is a firecracker.
She is a
This
firecracker.
should be made into a movie, by the way.
It would make a great movie, that part.
Anyone who's hearing, like, I want to see the two of you driving, all around Basilicata.
Yes.
And she's just such a great person for doing what she did.
Yes, it's a riot.
Yeah.
So we went and found, and thank God I found one living member. There was only one still in Rotondella because everybody else had moved away.
Right.
And her name was Carmela Perciante.
Wow.
The exact name is my
I
grandmother.
love that.
And it was my grandmother's brother who named his daughter after his sister who had left, and he missed her. And Italians have that as a custom.
Yeah.
You name a child after a hero.
Yeah.
And to him, she
Right.
must have been his hero.
I love that.
So when I went back and I found family, they were standoffish at first. They wanted to make sure that this was legitimate.
Yeah.
There are 4 sisters and 1 brother. The brother was in charge. He looked at the family tree. He looked at the pictures. He examined everything. And he gave me a kiss on both cheeks, and I was family. And there's a lot of research that they did. So it's family. It's my family. And so I feel home there. And God bless them. They have just taken me into their hearts. It's the most beautiful thing, and I adore them. And they love Isa. When Isa and I go back, she plays with her cousins, and so yeah, it is. It's family. The whole issue of dialect is interesting. Dialect bonds people together. So people have, and there are dialects all over the United States. I mean, all over Italy.
Yeah.
Right.
Many.
Supposedly the statistics say there's as many as 1,000 dialects in Italy. And every little borgo has its own dialect. Yeah. But even in Bergamo, which is an elegant, beautiful city in the north, there's a dialect there. So the dialects join people together, right? Like a club, like you all speak, and it's a vernacular. It came organically, and so it needs to be respected because that's their language. But one dialect to another dialect is totally ununderstandable. They can't understand it at all. So it's a way of bonding people together and a way of separating people.
Exactly.
Because if I want to speak in dialect, you don't understand one word. Like in some respects, this is kind of a funny analogy, but when my brother and I were little, we used to speak Pig Latin.
Yeah.
You know, do you remember Pig Latin?
Yeah, I do.
We used to speak Pig Latin, and we did it so my mother wouldn't understand what we were saying, and she had a fit.
Of course.
But in some respects, dialect is like that.
Yeah.
You know, it's this secret stuff. Like we can talk to each other like this and nobody else understands. But it also keeps people aside, keeps people out.
That's fundamental.
Yeah.
You know?
It veils and reveals. It does both.
Mm-hmm.
And so, for instance, when I first came to Florence, I knew some dialect. And so I was talking to my Italian teacher and using some of those words. And she said, forget it all. You cannot be speaking dialect here in Florence. But at first I was really confused by that because I thought, why? But even when I went back to Rotondella and I did a lot of research, I talked with some of the old grandmothers, you know, and they only knew dialect. So I would have to have somebody there as an intermediary. So the nonna would speak dialect to this person. This person would translate it into Italian and then talk to me. And I would say it back, and we had to go back and forth.
Right.
So the dialect was shocking to me. I didn't realize that. Umberto knew it was there. Ferdinando knew, like you said, how did I find Rotondella when I went the first time? I never anticipated it and didn't realize the depth of the disconnect and the connect.
Yeah. Because it ultimately revealed so much about your family. And while I was reading the book, I was thinking about so many things, but especially I found really interesting your use of a lot of words and dialect that are sort of, the way Italian-American communities, the way dialect was transformed. So like in my own family, I didn't realize what the hell one of my paternal grandmother was saying until I think I went to Naples for the first time. And I heard things that were similar because I had also only been, in Florence and Rome and Milan or whatever. And then when I finally went south, I was like, oh, that's what she was saying. And I think it's fascinating because in your particular family story, you were hungry for all of this. You wanted it. You wanted Nonna Carmela to speak to you in dialect. She said no. Because, of course, in America at that time, that would people would discriminate against you. And then what'll happen, you'll go to Italy and you'll speak dialect and people will discriminate against you again. And then we'll talk a second about the South. And your mother resisted it.
Absolutely.
Your mother didn't want any part of it. She could speak it, she could understand it, but she really sort of negated that whole sense of her identity that you embraced.
Because it isolated her from her mother.
Yeah.
She did it on purpose. And she said that. She says, I couldn't stand my mother. And she said, so I refused to speak dialect. Wow. I read everything I could. I became as educated as I could. Mm-hmm. I mean, she was rebellious and she knew exactly how to distinguish herself from the immigrant experience.
Exactly. Yeah. She wanted to get as far away from it as possible.
100%.
And you
wanted to
get as close to, that was, it's, the dialect is your love language with your grandmother, and I love your use of the terms of endearment that she would use with you and all of the, the names for food or for, things. It's a beautiful way to understand the culture. And then also seeing, when you did get to Rotondella, it's like, this is like, it's really like going to another country.
And it's real.
Yeah.
It's real.
Yeah. Yeah. And then we go back to things like omertà and, and the power of language. I want to talk about Southern Italy a little because I don't think it's often understood. And I think your book is important because it does reveal and talk about the reality of the Mezzogiorno. It's such a misunderstood part of Italy, even though now it's become very fashionable and people, everyone's, going to, for example, everyone goes to Basilicata now, to Puglia, let's not even talk about it. Calabria is still, is rising, but probably, is extremely popular compared to like when I first visited 30 years ago or something. How would you explain to somebody listening to us, like what it's really like when you're in a place like Rotondella? I mean, this is not Naples. This is not a fancy beach resort in Puglia or in Sicily. Very different from Sicily. That's like a whole different thing. But how do you reckon with that? Like what Southern Italy is depicted at, where it is still today compared to maybe the rest of the country?
The Mezzogiorno, that whole area, is still behind what I think most Americans and what I thought when I first came. The transportation system is awful. The roads are still a mess. The train system doesn't access the South. Mm-hmm. I mean, for me to go from Florence to Rotondella by train, I take 2 or 3 trains, and it's an 8-hour trip. Everything, I can't fly there. I can fly to Bari.
Yeah.
And coming from Florence today, there's no flight direct to Bari. I have to go to Bologna or Pisa.
Right.
So now I have to go someplace else, fly to Bari, and then cousins have to come pick me up an hour and a half away and take me back. Hospital systems. Hospital systems are not good, is the truth. One of my cousins has breast cancer. She traveled the whole way to Milano to go to Veronese, to the clinic there. From the Ionian Sea the whole way to Milan. Italy's long, and we have the Apennines right through the center. It takes her 10, 12 hours by car just to get to Milano. So the South, with the transportation system, the flights, the airports, the services just aren't there. I mean, even hotels, it's a whole different system. Yeah. But you are right, it is changing slowly. But I think Americans particularly need to go to the South first. I mean, if anyone's listening and thinks, I'd like to find my roots, I'd like to go back, I can only say you need to go back. Because finding the documents online, you can do that in some places now. But that's very different than putting your body on the streets, talking to the people, seeing what it's really like. Life is a full body experience. And if I had never gone back to Rotondella, if I had just read all the books that I read, Carlo Levi, he tells us about it, Christ stopped at Eboli, he never got to Rotondella. You can read all that, but only by being there can you see. Now, Matera is in Basilicata, so Basilicata is now becoming known. And for your listeners, Calabria is the toe, Puglia is the heel, and Basilicata is the poorest region in Italy in the instep. And so Basilicata is still the poorest region in all of Italy, but Matera is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. But even getting to Matera is hard.
It's not easy.
No. I go from Florence to Salerno and then a 2.5-hour bus ride, right?
Yeah.
Through the Parco there. And you finally get to Matera. So the South is still underserved. Mm-hmm. It's still harsh. But the people are proud. Yeah. The people are proud. They love where they are. They love their countrymen, but you are right. And Sicily's different. Sicily's a whole different world, and they want to be Sicilian.
Oh, yeah.
You know. So, the Mezzogiorno is still nothing like Florence or Rome.
No. And I think, when I went for the first time, though, I have to tell you, when I really started going to the South quite a lot, and I used to go quite often for work, I felt more at home than I had ever felt here, right?
Yeah.
I just like everyone's just like so much nicer, Nothing against Florentines. I love Florentines. I have a lot. I mean, my daughter's, Florentine, but was something about being in the South that just, it's like the extreme hospitality, the pride in, in where you are, the love of that territory. But I think it's so powerful what you say, because we're talking, it's 2025. These places are still like really hard to get to. Imagine what your grandparents went through.
Yes.
And for you to be there and to really understand, I think probably is it comes out a lot in the book, but it gave you that really deep understanding of your family and your story. That kind of geographical isolation, the hardships. I mean, your grandmother was incredibly strong, and that's not accident. She survived. I mean, also, we didn't even talk about that, surviving the health conditions that were there, at the beginning of the last century, in this remote town in southern Italy. So, she was already a survivor, and then taking that trip and, fulfilling then ultimately the American dream.
Exactly.
It's an incredible story, Libby.
In fact, I said when I interviewed one of the older grandmothers in town, in Florence, in Rotondella, I said, why did my grandparents leave? Like, I thought there was a secret, like a death or a murder or something. Why would they leave? She looked at me and she said, they wanted to eat.
Yeah.
They wanted to eat.
Yeah.
The poverty was just so extreme.
Yeah.
And this old Nonna said to me, what choice did they have? You could either stay here and not eat, or you could leave. And so it took courage, but it also was a way out.
It was survival.
It was survival.
It was survival. So, surprise question. So, do you have another book that you're already crafting? Another story?
Yes, yeah, but I never talk about them.
Okay.
Yeah. But the funniest thing is that I've written 2 memoirs.
Yeah.
Right. And so I have this idea for a fiction book.
I'm so excited.
Yeah, but I don't know if I can write fiction, but I'm playing with it.
Fiction is a lot of fun. It's liberating. I didn't think that my first book would be a novel. I thought it would be something different as well. And then I don't know. The story just came out. There's something very freeing about fiction. I think you'll have a very good time. You're probably already having a good time with it. So tell everyone when the book is coming out and where they can find it and anything else that you'd like to share.
Thank you. It's coming out November 4, and it's on Amazon, Asterism, Barnes & Noble. It's not out in Italy yet. We're hoping that an Italian publishing house will pick it up and have a translation made. But in the States, it will be out November 4 from a small press called Bordighera Press.
Okay.
And it publishes only Italian-American literature. So anyone out there who's writing a book, about Italian Americans, this press is the one. They have already a great audience already built. They're associated with Queen's University in New York City.
Yeah.
And they do some work also with Roma Tre here in Rome. And so they're very, very well connected. And the story is not a story about my life and the fact that it was something special. My life was nothing special. In fact, I think that it's the typical immigration story, and the forgiveness that comes with understanding your roots. And I hope that people read it and are encouraged to put their feet on the ground in whatever ancestral village they come from.
Thank you, Libby. And to everyone out there, honestly, this is such a great read. I'll just end the podcast by Libby already knows this because I sent it to her in an email. But first of all, I read the book in, like 2 days. I couldn't put it down. And it has been a long time since I've read a book that moved me so much. I mean, I was crying, I was laughing. It was so much of it I felt was just relatable to so many of us. And I think also it's, we need this kind of book more than ever. So thank you for writing the book. Thank you for sharing your family story with us. And thank you for coming on the podcast today.
Thank you.
Grazie mille e alla prossima volta.
Grazie.